I appreciate that. So Zoom always tells me when we're recording. So I've been reading your book again, Mitch, and so I'm on chapter 7, and I had some questions, if that's okay, because the reason I was excited about this chapter, and I got the book in front of me, um,
Yes.
is
Yes.
because it says I do look got the book.
Hey, before you ask the question on chapter 7 and you have the book in front of you, I want people to know that the course, the How to Hire and Keep Great People course, is now available.
Is
And
it
so, yes, so we'll put the link in the comments here. I'll do that after we get done.
okay?
They can also go visit my profile, and the link is also there. And yeah, they can enroll in How to Hire and Keep Great People and learn how to hire and keep great people. There you go.
Well, I like that because this actually brings us back to the start. And so there are
Yes,
some key things here that kind of just,
yes,
were mind boggling. But what caught my interest, well, there's a lot here. So there's a lot of backstory
yeah,
that's not even in the book that I would
right,
like you to elaborate on. But again, it says professor for a day. And so
yeah,
that immediately, got my attention. And so it's you're a young man. This is you in the book. It
mhm,
says you are 22 years old, right?
yeah,
You are
yeah,
22 years old, and you have been put in charge of a fashion retail somewhere in America somewhere. You didn't actually
mhm,
mention where, but
mhm,
it's underperforming,
mhm,
right? And
yes,
and it's in a small town, and it's in a mall that's not getting a whole lot of foot traffic, right?
right,
And
right,
so you have been asked to to perform a miracle, if anything.
yes,
So
yes,
I'm not quite, but you didn't do that. So what it sounds like from the book is that you were put in that situation either, and you accepted the challenge. So I have to
mhm,
assume that you did accept the challenge because you're
yes,
there. You didn't run
yes,
from it,
right,
but there's no indication that there was a whole lot of support, maybe some from your regional supervisor or somewhere out there, because we're going to talk to one of the sayings that you kind of reiterated.
mhm,
But so you're in this situation and you're trying to figure it all out.
mhm,
22 years
mhm,
old, you're jumping from church to retail, which is a little bit of a
right,
twist.
right,
And
yeah, yeah. It's a
and
story,
so
man. It's a
and
story.
so you kind of thrown into the wolves, and I'm assuming that you had some idea of what you wanted to accomplish. You just didn't know how to accomplish it.
Yeah, so let me connect some of those dots. Obviously, when you write a book, you can't include all the details, or the book would be far too long and boring. So you have to decide what highlights of those stories to tell, and especially a book like that that's very strategy and advice driven. So to connect the dots, you're making a lot of assumptions that are very close to reality. Those are I was 22 years old, which I state in the book. I had only been with that company 6 months
Mm.
at the time. So this is in the late 90s. At the time, I was one of maybe, I don't know, 4 to 5 people in that company that got promoted that quickly, um, which is actually a that kind of shows the wisdom and vision that my manager in the store I came from, who was actually my district manager as well. He had a lot of belief in me for good reason. I later, and in the book I share this, I think later, probably 3 years later, I asked him why he promoted me so quickly. Um, and so he had some good vision. The store, actually, at the time of this story, we weren't underperforming. We the first year I took over that store, we grew 130% in year one.
Mhm.
And so we were not underperforming in sales. I was underperforming in hiring and recruiting. So, and I think I allude to this in the book. I was just turning and burning people.
And
That
that's
that
exactly the
means,
phrase.
yeah,
Yeah.
that just means I was hiring, because the team that I inherited You can't, in those scenarios, it's a really bad decision to just walk in and let go of everyone, because then you have no one.
Right.
So you sometimes have to let go of people that maybe there's legalities, and we did have some of that. The shrinkage, so in other words, the theft and loss comparative to revenue the year before I took over was 60%. If that sounds like a high number, it's because it is. Anyone in retail will understand that. So we did have some legality issues, and I did have to eradicate some teammates because of those legalities.
Right.
But we had some great people that, in fact, one guy that was the assistant manager at the time, I kept him on for another year and a half. He was really good at what he did. That's another story for another day, but he, became a dear friend in life, and we kept in touch for a lot of years afterward. But I was underperforming from the standpoint of, as I say in the book, I'd never hired, I'd never fired, I barely knew how to interview. I had done a little bit of interviewing in the store I was in before, and there's a reason for that. That's not bad leadership of which I came from. I wasn't even an assistant manager. So the store I came from at the time, we were the number one store in the company of over 400 stores. We were the highest volume store. I was number 6 or 7 on the totem pole in ranking. But again, the manager I came from, he saw something that made him go, this guy gets it. And so they wanted to move me up as quickly as possible. The downside to that is there's a lot of things you don't know. And I want to highlight that because a lot of people get promoted in those scenarios. And sadly, a lot of people get promoted in those scenarios and don't have the aptitude to learn the best strategies. That was one thing that years later, when I asked my district manager, I can say his name is Terry. I said, Terry, hey, why did you promote me in this situation? And he said, Mitch, because you are a great leader and you're going to become an even better leader and people connect with you. And I said, yeah, but I didn't know anything. And I shared with him some of these stories. He said, yeah, but what we knew about you is that you could learn those things and that you were very self-taught. And so they saw those leadership traits in me that let them say, we're going to give him support, but we're also going to give him autonomy, because the best way for me to learn was through that autonomy. So that connects some of your dots. I'm 22 years old. I'm running this multi-million-dollar business. It was not performing well. In fact, Keith, the year before I took over, there was over $300,000 of clothes that were going out the back door and the front door through theft.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
the situation the store was in. And so here I am, professor for a day. Now you can continue your enamoration with that chapter because it's interesting. Yeah.
Well, that's where it starts, but then it goes into what you did to make sense of your world, I guess, at that time. So, you had the leadership, then there was that trust. People put trust in you, but you had to start figuring things out. And so the first thing that you alluded to in the book is, and this is my favorite, I started asking questions, and I started asking a lot of questions. And so that really inspires me, because that's even on my profile on LinkedIn, asking questions, I'm
Right. The why guy, right? Yeah.
But so what questions, if you could think back at that time, what questions were you needing to ask, one, and how did you go about getting those answers? And I want you to focus on that first, or I want us to focus on that first, because I want to lead into the fact that you were young. 22 is pretty young. 22 is college age, or just getting out of college. And so when we ask questions, you are actually leading and managing people your own age, pretty much, if not
and older. Some of them are older.
But you alluded to the fact that, well, I need to go find people, and the people that were working and buying and well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So go ahead and let's talk about the question thing. What questions did you have to ask, and how'd you go about finding those answers?
So one of the questions, obviously, and I just knew this at an early age. I'm talking 12, 13 years old. I just had this innate sense at that young age that everything begins internally. And I've carried that with me through life, and that's been affirmed and confirmed and reaffirmed. And so in that scenario, I did what I had done previously, and that was, okay, what is there about me that people enjoy as a manager? What are my strengths? The people that I have hired that have worked out, what are their common traits? What do they bring to the team that someone else hasn't? Their cells are high performing. They've been here a little bit longer than others. They enjoy working. They're really good with the customer. So really what I did is, and it's kind of a strange analogy, but in my mind, what I created was that FBI agent investigator wall, where you kind of had your idea or your person in the middle. And then you had all these threads and strings that were kind of pulling out these common characteristics in each person. And that's really mentally kind of the game I played is where are these other people? Because, and I say this in the book as well, my supervisor at the time, Terry, he and his wife who worked together had a saying, and that saying was birds of a feather flock together.
And I wanted to get to that.
And they reiterated that to me. Anytime I would ask them, they were very supportive, by the way, but they didn't give me all the answers, which I value. But anytime I would ask them about recruiting, they would say, who's your best teammate? And I would give them an answer, and they would say, where do you find more of them? I'm like, what do you mean? Where do you find more of them? They're like, where do they shop? Where do they live? Who do they hang out with? What classes did they take? What's their favorite coffee joint? What's their favorite book? Like, where do those people live and exist? You go to those places and you're going to find more of those people. Birds of a feather flock together. We're habitual beings. And so that really led me on my investigative journey of, okay, so-and-so is a great teammate. I love working with them. I've asked them about here. They love working here. Our communication's great. They do a great job with the customer. Where's more of that person? So those are the questions I begin asking. Where do you hang out? Who's your friend group? Who's your favorite customer you love to help? Who's a customer you see coming in often? Have we asked them if they know anyone? Because they obviously enjoy spending money with us. And so that really just led me to this, what we call the gold mine. We used to use the gold mining analogy that back in the day when it was just a pick and an axe, what they would do is they would take that axe and they would beat a rock until they found a vein. And once they found the vein, they would follow that vein to the mother lode, which was normally, closer to the middle of the mountain. So that was our recruiting strategy. Is once we found really great people, we just followed that vein until we found more great people. One of the scenarios, the specific one in chapter 7 of the book, was universities and colleges, because we were a high fashion retail store. That means we're on the cutting edge of fashion. In a town of 35,000 people, we set the trends for that town. Literally, the things that we displayed and sold is what you soon saw people, the cool people wearing in that town. So college kids love that because they want to be on fashion. They want to work hard. They need jobs because they're having to pay for college and having to buy food. And for the first time in their life, they're on their own. Upper class college kids are looking for a career. And we love setting people out on career paths. And so that is the one commonality of others that I found. And that's where that story came from in Professor for a Day.
Well, then it goes to the question, Mr. Gray, and this was the student, what is your favorite thing about being a manager? And you actually put that in the book. So that hits home to you. Can you talk to me about why that hits home? And this is the question again, Mr. Gray, what is your favorite thing about being a manager? What is your favorite thing about being a manager?
So let me set the premise. This is in a textiles class, by the way, not a business class. So when I found out that college kids were a lucky draw for me, that I could find really great talent, which, by the way, for people listening, that is still not lost 20 years later. College campuses are a gold mine. When I found that out, I started contacting everybody I could on college campuses to come and speak to their classes. Well, I built a really great relationship with a professor at a nearby university. She taught textiles. That's what she taught. So I thought, I'm in fashion, textiles. So
I mean, I know what that is, but You wanted to be in a business class, or it didn't really matter? You just wanted to be where the
I didn't
people were.
care. I just needed to be where the people were. Now,
Yeah.
I pride myself because of my preacher background. I pride myself on being able to craft a message that can relate to any audience. So so a text, but I'm like, I'm in fashion, it's textiles. And at that university, a lot of the business students actually took that class as a, prerequisite for some strange reason. So
Okay.
yeah, I'm in this textiles class and I'm like, well, one thing I know to do is to offer myself up for questions because I quite frankly didn't know a ton about textiles. I knew about clothing. So yeah, I just said, hey, what questions do you have for me? And this student, I'll never forget, she raised her hand and said, Mr. Gray, what's your favorite thing about managing people? And that was actually a really strange question to me, not because it was a textiling class, but because I view management and leadership often in
Separate.
separate categories. Yeah, although they can be the same and they should be the same, they're often not in function. And so I actually got to riff a little bit on the reason I love leading people, and that is because I love people. I love inspiring people. Many people that have followed me for any length of time know that at 10 years old, all I wanted to do was be a preacher, a pastor. I literally, at that moment in life, felt like God, the greater being, source energy, whatever, spoke to me and said, "You're going to impact millions of people in your life." And so when she said, what do you enjoy most about managing? My only answer could have been, because I love impacting and inspiring people, period, whether I do that through clothing or books or LinkedIn lives or whatever. And that
Mhm.
was really intriguing because I didn't go into this in the book, but that led to about a 30-minute conversation of what does business really look like? What does a career in any form? Is it really a career or is it really an opportunity to engage, impact, and inspire? And that class actually was a room, if I remember, out of about 14, 15 females, I was the only male in the room. And so it became this really cool diatribe between male, female, guy, not too much older than them, probably same age as some of them, running this business,
Mhm.
all of a sudden engaging some females about what they could do in their life to inspire, empower, engage. Yeah, that became a cool experience. That's why I've never forgotten it, because that one question led to, wow, this can be really powerful stuff. Even though we're selling shirts and jeans, we're doing something more than that. And that was really my first experience in actually broadening my vision of how inspiration can take place anywhere.
Hmm.
And that was a really cool thing. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that not only you were inspired, because that seems to be a transformative part of your
Yeah.
life, that very moment, that 30 minutes of time. But did you end up recruiting any of those students to come work for you or come shop at
Well,
your,
yeah, I recruited all of them,
to go come shop?
but one of the young ladies that was in that class at the time, she actually was working for me at the time. She was one of
Okay.
my assistant managers, and we didn't get anybody that came and worked. Multiple of them came and shopped with us. Yeah, and that was a really cool. I had a relationship with the professor for many years to come,
Clarify that.
and so the professor, not me, the actual professor of the class, they got paid to teach that class.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
So
I
you
had
were,
a relationship, like a working relationship.
okay.
I taught in her classes multiple times a semester,
Okay.
previously and from then on for about a 5-year period. And she often brought back that very conversation as well as to why she really enjoyed having me back. Because it was just, we were able to engage in conversation. The thing I love about college age adults is they're at their peak curiosity. They're wondering what to do in the world. They're trying to find their place in the world. They're releasing their parental figures, moving into their own skin.
Mhm.
And that's a really powerful time to engage with them. And so, yeah, it was a fun time. And I don't know, I probably had over a 5-year period, I don't know, 75 to 100 kids that came and worked for me from that single university would be my guess if I tracked it. So, that's quite a few.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we definitely found the gold mine. Yeah.
So this all leads up to the fact that my last question for our time together is, if birds of a feather flock together, and now through a process of trial and error and asking questions and investigating, what then became your, and this is going to be real specific, your strategy? what became your strategy for finding great people? I mean, did you put it like, did you see, put it in sequence? Did you create a model from it? Because we're now 20 years later and
Mhm.
you're still talking about, how
Yeah,
to hire and keep great people, but you've got to find them. So
yeah.
what's the strategy?
My strategy became what I've now coined as lifestyle recruiting, especially for small businesses.
Hmm.
So every
Lifestyle
day,
recruiting?
yeah,
Lifestyle?
every day lifestyle. Every day, people go to the coffee shop, they go to the grocery store, they go shopping for clothes, they get gas, they talk to others, they get on social media. Every day, you are engaging with other people. The question becomes: is your awareness of those people high enough that you can immediately recognize if that is someone you would want to connect with further? If you're in a hiring position, the question becomes, is that someone I would recruit? And I tell another story in the book of my kids were very young at that age, but they were old enough to know what life was happening in life. And it became this kind of running joke that anytime we went to a restaurant, oh, is dad going to recruit the waiter or waitress? Ooh, is dad going to ask for the manager and recruit the manager? If we went car shopping, ooh, is dad going to recruit the car salesman? Because that's what I did, because it just became a part of my life. Because if I was going to run a successful business and build an all-star team, I wanted the best people around me possible.
Sure.
But here's the fact, and it's still the fact now, Keith, even through the pandemic, and people, unfortunately, people have lost their jobs, they've lost opportunity. That's why I say there's more qualified, highly valuable people looking for jobs now than ever. I also say the majority of the time, the greatest talent is already employed. And so, fortunately, in the pandemic, I don't view this as a great resignation. I view this as a golden age of hiring, because there are great people looking for opportunities. There is also great talent already employed. And so you can play both sides. 25 years ago, that was not necessarily the case. The majority of highly talented people were already employed. And so the question then becomes, do you want great talent or not? If you don't want great talent, you're just going to sit and wait. If you want great talent, you're going to have to go find them. Great talent will rarely walk through your door. Rarely. You have to go find them. And that is as true today in the day and age of technology as it was 25 years ago. I go to Starbucks 3 times a week. I go to the grocery store multiple times a week. I go to bookstores multiple times a week, and I find no less than 10 people a week that I would recruit if I was building a team like that. No less than 10 a week. Anybody can go find 40 people a month. Anyone. It's just a matter of getting out and doing it, raising your awareness. And that's what I learned to do. That became my system. Everywhere I went, every person I talked to, hey, Keith, do you know great people? Hey, Keith, do you know a great person looking for a job? Hey, Keith, how are you doing, man? I heard you were struggling with your job. You looking for a new opportunity yet? Those became my questions, and I asked them 100 times a day. And with that, I was able to build unbelievable teams, unbelievable teams. And I challenge people in today's day and age. I could go to anyone's backyard and do that within 10 minutes of anyone's walking space, for the most part.
All right.
Within 10 minutes, we can go find you 5 great people to add to your team right now. No ifs, ands, or buts. I would almost put money on the table with it, because it just works. But when you wait on people to send you a resume or see your online opportunity, now use those things, but have your toolbox full of more than just 1 or 2 opportunities. Use electronics, use virtual, use old school resumes, but also get out and recruit, especially again for small businesses. If you're running a team of 20 people or less, you should be handpicking 19 of those 20 every single time. And then you get to control everything. And that's what you want to do. And it works. I'm telling you, it works. Be the professor for a day. Yeah.
So is that kind of the big picture of the program that you're selling, how to hire and keep great people? Is that the crux of it?
So I teach lifestyle recruiting.
Lifestyle recruiting?
I teach other forms of recruiting as well. I do teach culture design and leadership development. We cover all those areas in how to hire and keep great people. Yeah.
The reason I asked that is because these last 5 minutes opens up another conversation that we could
Mhm.
have. And I was wondering if you were
Yes.
willing to have it, or if that's something people need to pay to buy.
I'd love
directly.
to have it because I want to give people information. Obviously, I also want people to enroll in the course. It's an incredible value. But I would love to have that conversation as well because I want people to understand that they can find great people. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart with all sincerity. It's not difficult. It is not difficult. You just have to have the courage. I was talking to a leader the other day, real quick,
Mhm.
and I asked them, what recruiting strategies are you using? And like many, their only answer was, well, we post online. And so you're just sitting and waiting for a crapshoot. And I said, so you don't get out and go into your town, walk the street, go to businesses, find people. Like, we've never thought of that before. And so I took them out, and within an hour, we found 10 people for them to recruit. Within an
Dang,
hour,
dang,
1 hour. And that can happen in any community, for any business, in any industry. We can find you great people. You can learn how to find great people. You just have to be willing. And for business leaders, and I've had people ask me this, well, Mitch, I don't have time. Then my question to you is, then do you really believe in growing your business? If
Mhm.
you tell me you don't have time to build great talent, then you're telling me you don't have time to build your business. No one in their right mind would say that. And if you do, then you need to move on to another job. And that's just the reality of it. And so what did I say in the beginning of the
Well,
conversation?
that was almost good enough to kind of like
But
cut
I want
it
to
and
stop it
let's.
here. I want to stop it here. I began the conversation with, I did the only thing I knew how to do, and that was go internal.
Right.
And that's what I encourage all business leaders to do. Go internally and ask, what are you really, really willing to do to build a great team? There you go.
Mitch, I appreciate your time. It's about 3 minutes before 7 o'clock. Those on LinkedIn, hopefully you enjoyed this time. Mitch, are you willing to come back next Wednesday and do it all over again?
Love it. Let's do it.
Okay. I'll see you then. Thank you so much. Take care, man.
You too.